Stephen Moore, and I'm a ceramics expert on ABC's Antiques Retro, and I'm also an ambassador for Middleport Pottery. Well, my day job is as an auctioneer here at Anderson & Garland in Newcastle. Again, another long-established firm. We've been founded since 1840. So I suppose, maybe I don't like new businesses. I think there's something, there's something about a long-established firm, traditions of service, traditions of quality, and also people I've only been here 4 years, but most of the other senior staff have been here for a long time. People get to build up a trust and a familiarity, and it's the same with buildings. People often don't miss something until it's gone, but heritage is such a fragile resource that we all need to harness in the years ahead. I got interested in antiques really through my father, particularly, and I suppose my grandparents. My father taught pottery. So as a child, I was regularly given bits of clay to play with in the summer holidays. And the very concept of taking, clay from the earth, fashioning with your hands, and firing it into something permanent was to me a kind of alchemy and magic. So very soon after that, I started collecting bric-a-brac, namely, please granny, can I have this sort of thing. And I got a little collection of bits and bobs. And then the minute I learned that there was actually pottery made in the northeast of England, it wasn't something that was just made in Staffordshire, I was completely fascinated, and that led me to meet people who would work, because the last factory closed in the 1960s, so there were still people around. I got to meet the works manager, and as a child, a friend of mine knew the people who owned the site of what was Maidens Pottery, which was an enormous purpose-built factory from the 1870s, but of course everything had gone. So 10, 11, 12 I was taken there, and I remember to the very day in a dark attic there was a basket in a corner, and there were some unglazed saucers, and I was asked if I'd like one. And to me, it was like I was given a block of gold, because an ordinary saucer, but what tickled me was it never left the factory. I was probably the first person to touch it for 100 and something years, and that connection back to the past is what I think antiques does, and heritage does the same as well. It can connect you to the place you've been and show you the place you're going to as well. Well, I'm an ambassador for Middleport Pottery, and I was honoured really to be asked to be involved, because it is for me like stepping back in time. Those doors open and you see that cobbled street, and it's like you are stepping back to the 1880s, and it is, well, I'm almost lost for words, which is not something I normally am, because everything about it, everything you could imagine to be in a Victorian pottery is there. And of course it's not just Victorian, the factory is still going, so you walk around, you're not just seeing the equipment, you're seeing all the traditional techniques. And the great thing about when these buildings are still working and still producing, there's nothing like a person who's actually doing the job to tell you all the trouble about it. And so much of history is about putting stuff into context. And I think Middleport puts British ceramics into context. We can go to Middleport. We're not only seeing the heritage of the built heritage, but the fact it's next to the canal. Everything is there, and it just brings it to life. And the project is not only so great because it's preserving the historic side and the factory and the pottery, but you're bringing new life and new businesses in and involving the community as well. It's so important because this was part of the community. Often potteries were run the traditional Victorian way, that the workers would live nearby. Workplaces were a big part of the community, and we've often lost that now as companies become multinationals and things, and it's important that we bring that back. The first time I went to Middleport, I kept thinking of all those empty rooms at Maidens Pottery in Newcastle, which today is a thriving community of small businesses and media businesses, particularly a great example of regeneration, but all the history's gone. At Middleport, they have the same filter press, they have the same steam engine. But not only are they there, they're working, they're still 100 and something years later. So for me, it's not just the heritage of the building and the object, it's the people as well. Everybody there doing their ordinary jobs, but actually they're not ordinary jobs. These are highly skilled jobs, doing techniques which were once common in Stoke-on-Trent, which now only Middleport's the last place in the world where these techniques are still being used. And you know, people like John Machen, who's worked there 30-something years, he puts his hand into something and knows it's right. He just has a feeling for it, and that's a skill which is so fragile. It is like a building itself. It is something that needs to be preserved, and not only preserved but passed on to future generations, because this is something so precious. Ceramics is something that, you know, we made in this country into what it is now, and so much of it has been lost. And Middleport's a place where it hasn't been lost, and I will give, you know, my last breath to save it.